Ethan was halfway through repairing the loose hinge on his kitchen cabinet when his phone buzzed across the counter. He glanced at it, expecting another reminder from his calendar or a spam call. Instead, it was his brother's name lighting up the screen. "Tell me you're on your way," Marcus said the second Ethan answered, his voice tight with panic. "On my way where?" Ethan asked, tightening the last screw and wiping his hands on a rag. "To the cafe. The blind date. The one I told you about 3 weeks ago. The one I can't go to now because my boss just called me into an emergency meeting with the regional director." Ethan closed his eyes slowly. "Marcus, that's in 40 minutes. You told that woman you'd be there." I know, that's why I'm calling you. You live closer. You look enough like me. You know all the basics. Please, man, just go in my place, explain later, or don't, just don't let me stand her up." Ethan laughed in disbelief. "You're asking me to impersonate you on a blind date. I'm asking you to save me from looking like a complete jerk. I already sent her a picture of us together at Mom's birthday, so she has a rough idea. Wear the blue jacket. Tell her you had to shave. Please, I owe you forever." Ethan hesitated. He had spent the last year keeping his life quiet and predictable after a rough breakup and a string of disappointments. Dating again wasn't high on his list, especially not as someone else. "I can't," he said weakly. "You can," Marcus shot back. "You just don't want to. This woman sounds incredible, Ev. She's kind, smart, funny, she volunteers at a reading center for kids. I've talked to her for weeks. I just can't miss this." Ethan stared at the floor, torn between irritation and an odd sense of curiosity. "What's her name?" "Lena. Please, man." There was a long pause. The hinge creaked softly as the cabinet door settled into place. Ethan exhaled. "Fine," he said. "But if this turns into a disaster, it's on you." "You're a lifesaver," Marcus said, relief flooding his voice. "I'll Venmo you for coffee. And dinner. And emotional damages." Ethan hung up and stood still for a moment, wondering what exactly he'd just agreed to. The cafe sat on a quiet tree-lined street near the river, warm light spilling through its windows as evening settled in. Ethan arrived 10 minutes early, wearing the blue jacket, feeling like a stranger inside his own skin. He rehearsed harmless lies in his head, nothing major, just enough to get through the evening without humiliating his brother. When the door chimed and she walked in, he forgot every word he'd planned. Lena scanned the room, her dark hair falling loosely over her shoulders, her expression a blend of nerves and hope. When her eyes met his, something softened in her face. She smiled, not a polite smile, but one that carried warmth and recognition. "Marcus?" she asked. Ethan's heartbeat stumbled. "Yeah," he said, forcing a calm tone. "Lena, right, that's me." She slid into the chair across from him. "You look a little different than your photo." He swallowed. "New haircut. Impulse decision." She laughed lightly. "It works." For the first few minutes, their conversation stayed safely on the surface: coffee preferences, work hours, the sudden drop in evening temperature. But soon, without effort, it drifted into something deeper. Lena spoke about the children she read to twice a week, how one little boy had finally learned to sound out his first full sentence. She described the way his face lit up as if he'd unlocked a secret door to the world. Ethan listened, genuinely moved. He found himself sharing stories he rarely told anyone, about how he used to sketch cityscapes at night, about dreams he'd set aside in favor of practicality. Lena listened as if every word mattered. Somewhere between their second cups of coffee and the soft acoustic song playing in the background, Ethan forgot he was pretending to be someone else. When they left the cafe, the evening air felt alive. They walked along the river, the lights trembling across the water. Their steps fell into an easy rhythm, as if they'd known each other longer than a few hours. "Can I be honest?" Lena said softly. "Always," Ethan replied, the word slipping out before he remembered who he was supposed to be. "I was nervous about tonight," she admitted. "Blind dates always scare me. But I'm really glad I came." He felt a tightness in his chest, part warmth, part guilt. "Me too." They stopped at the edge of the bridge, leaning against the railing. The city murmured around them. For a moment, silence stretched between them, not awkward, just full. "I should get going," she said at last. "Early morning tomorrow." "Right. Yeah." She hesitated, then met his eyes. "Will we meet again next time?" The question landed gently but heavily, like a leaf that carried the weight of everything unspoken. Ethan's heart pounded. The truth pressed against his ribs, demanding air. He could already see the future splitting into two paths, one where he nodded, borrowed his brother's life for one more lie, and one where he told her everything and risked losing the look in her eyes. "I'd like that," he said finally. Her smile returned, brighter this time. They exchanged numbers, her fingers brushing his as she typed her name into his phone. That brief touch sent a quiet shiver through him. As he watched her walk away, guilt settled deeper into his chest. He had said yes. He had stepped fully into the lie. Marcus called the moment Ethan stepped into his apartment. "Tell me everything," he demanded. "It went well," Ethan said, dropping onto the couch. "Just well." She asked if we'd meet again. Marcus let out a triumphant shout. "I knew it. What did you say?" "I said yes." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "You did? Yeah. That's great," Marcus said slowly. "So, you want me to take over now?" Ethan stared at the ceiling. The thought of handing her over felt wrong in a way he couldn't explain. "Not yet," he said. "Just let me handle the next one. I'll tell her eventually." "Eventually. I will. I promise." The next week passed in a blur of messages. Lena texted him in the mornings with small observations, a crooked cloud that looked like a dog, a funny typo in a child's reading book. He found himself responding eagerly, his phone never far from his hand. Their second date unfolded at a quiet art exhibit. Lena wandered slowly between the paintings, her hands clasped behind her back, asking questions about brushstrokes and hidden meanings. Ethan answered honestly, sometimes admitting he didn't know, sometimes sharing what he felt. "You see things differently," she said at one point. "How so?" "Most people just tell me what something is supposed to mean. You tell me what it makes you feel." Her words struck him deeper than he expected. They talked until the gallery closed, then sat on the steps outside, sharing fries from a nearby food truck. The night felt gentle, unhurried. When she rested her head briefly on his shoulder, Ethan's chest filled with both joy and dread. By the third date, the lie had grown roots. It followed him everywhere, coiling quietly around every truth he wanted to tell. Lena invited him to the reading center. He watched her kneel beside children who clung to her words as if they were lifelines. She introduced him as Marcus. Each time she said the name, it landed like a pebble in his shoe, small, persistent, impossible to ignore. That night, as they walked beneath a canopy of streetlights, she said softly, "You're nothing like I imagined you'd be." "In a good way, I hope," he replied. "In the best way." The words echoed through him long after he dropped her off. Weeks slipped by. Their connection deepened into something tender and unmistakably real. They shared fears, childhood memories, long silences that felt safe. Ethan fell in love with her in the way no one ever plans, quietly, inevitably. And with every passing day, the truth grew heavier. Marcus noticed the change in his brother. "You're in too deep," he warned one evening over takeout. "I know," Ethan said. "Then fix it. I'm trying to find the right moment." "There is no right moment for a lie this big." Ethan didn't answer. He knew Marcus was right. He just didn't know how to survive the fallout. The moment came on a rainy evening when Lena invited him to dinner at her apartment. The atmosphere felt different, charged with expectation. Candles flickered on the table, shadows dancing softly on the walls. They talked, laughed, shared memories. After dessert, she reached across the table and took his hand. "I need to tell you something," she said. His breath caught. "Me too." She smiled nervously. "You go first." The words tangled in his throat. His heart pounded so loudly he wondered if she could hear it. "Lena, my name isn't Marcus." Her expression shifted, confusion rippling across her face. "My brother asked me to take his place the night we met. He got stuck at work. I meant to tell you that same night. I didn't. And then it kept going, and I didn't know how to stop." Silence crashed into the room. The rain tapped steadily against the windows. "You're telling me," she said slowly, "that everything, every date, every text, you weren't who you said you were." "I was me," he said desperately. "Just, not the name. Not the identity you thought." She stood abruptly, pushing her chair back. "That's not a small detail, Ethan. I know. I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you." She paced the room, arms wrapped around herself. "Do you have any idea how humiliating this feels? How unsafe? I trusted you." The word cut deep. He had no defense. I think you should go, she said quietly, not meeting his eyes. Ethan nodded, throat tight. He left without another word, the door closing behind him with a final, devastating click. Days passed without a single message from her. The silence was louder than any argument could have been. He replayed every moment in his head, every smile built on a lie. Sleep came in fragments. Food lost its taste. Marcus called repeatedly. Ethan ignored most of the calls. When he finally answered, his voice was hollow. She told me everything, Marcus said quietly. She ran into me at the bookstore today. I didn't even know what to say. What did she say? That you broke her trust. Ethan closed his eyes. She's right. I never wanted it to go this far, Marcus said. I'm so sorry. So am I. A week later, an envelope appeared under Ethan's door. Inside was a children's drawing, a river, stick figures holding hands on a bridge, one labeled L, the other with no name at all. A short note was folded inside. I don't know if I'm ready to see you. But I needed you to know that not everything we shared feels like a lie to me. He stared at the words until they blurred. It took another 2 weeks before she agreed to meet him, choosing the same cafe where it had all begun. The air between them was cautious, brittle with the weight of what had passed. You hurt me, she said plainly. I know. I don't even know who I was falling for at first. You were falling for me, he said softly. Flawed, scared, wrong, but me. She studied his face, as if searching for the truth beneath. The wreckage. Why didn't you stop it? Because somewhere between that first coffee and the river walk, I stopped being brave enough to lose you. Her eyes glistened. And now I'm brave enough to stand here with nothing to hide, even if it means losing you anyway. They sat in silence, the hum of the cafe wrapping around them. Finally, she spoke. Trust doesn't snap back into place just because someone apologizes. I know. But neither does feeling. His breath caught. I don't forgive you yet, she continued. But I don't want to pretend what we had was nothing either. So what are you saying? She met his gaze. I'm saying we start again. Slowly. As Ethan. Not as a stand-in. And if you ever lie to me again, even about something small, it's over. Tears burned behind his eyes. I won't. This time, when they left the cafe together, there was no borrowed identity between them. Only two imperfect people standing on honest ground for the first time. Months later, as they walked along the river once more, Lena squeezed his hand and smiled up at him. You know, she said, our first date was a mess in all the ways that matter. Ethan laughed softly. And yet, you still asked if we'd meet again. She stopped walking and turned to face him. Because even then, I felt something real. He leaned down, brushing a gentle kiss against her forehead, grateful not for the lie that brought them together, but for the truth that finally allowed them to stay.